Okay, let's jump right in. We're going to unpack one of the biggest turning points in European history, the Battle of Leipzig. This is the moment Napoleon's empire really started to crumble.
It really is. It's a classic case of what happens when you stretch your power too thin. By 1813, Napoleon controlled this massive empire, from Spain all the way to Poland.
But it was a house of cards, especially after what happened in Russia the year
Oh,
before.
absolutely. That Russian campaign was a complete disaster. He didn't just lose a few battles, he lost his main army. His best, most experienced soldiers were gone. He was left scrambling to build a new army, mostly out of teenagers.
And that weakness was like a signal flare for his enemies.
It was exactly that. All these countries, Great Britain, Russia, Prussia, Sweden, they saw their chance. They stopped thinking about their own separate goals and formed this huge alliance, the coalition.
So what was their mission? It wasn't just about beating Napoleon in another battle, was it?
No, it was much bigger than that. They talked about restoring the balance of power. For almost 2 decades, Napoleon had just wrecked the old system of Europe.
He basically redrawn the map.
Exactly. So balance of power meant two things. First, push France back to its old borders and, free the German states. And second, set up a new system so that one country could never, ever dominate the continent like that again.
And for some reason, they decide the place to make this stand is Leipzig. Why there?
It's all about location, location, location. Leipzig was a major transport hub. All these crucial roads crossed right there. If the coalition could beat Napoleon at Leipzig, they could cut him off from all his remaining forces in Central Europe.
So it was the perfect stage for a final showdown.
The perfect stage. And a showdown is what they got. The scale of this thing is almost hard to imagine today.
Let's talk about the numbers. What kind of army did Napoleon manage to pull together?
He had about 190,000 soldiers, which, that sounds huge.
It does.
But again, these were mostly new recruits, and he was seriously lacking in experienced cavalry and, maybe more importantly, gunpowder. He didn't have enough for a long fight.
And what about the coalition?
They brought the numbers. They had more than 300,000 troops. And these weren't just rookies. They were well-supplied, experienced soldiers from 4 different nations.
Just coordinating that many people must have been a logistical nightmare.
A total nightmare. Different languages, different command structures,
Yeah.
all converging on one small city at the same time. It's kind of a miracle they pulled it off.
So you have almost 500,000 soldiers in one place.
Roughly 500,000, yes. And that's why this battle was the largest in human history right up until World War I. Nothing else even came close. It's just staggering.
Okay, so let's get into the fighting. Day 1, October 16th. How does it all kick off?
It starts with a huge artillery bombardment, just thunderous. The coalition forces attack from the south mainly, but also hit the northern side of the city to keep the French from moving their troops around.
And Napoleon himself is right there directing the defense.
Oh, yeah, he's in the thick of it, trying to hold the line against these first waves of Russian and Prussian soldiers. The fighting was brutal, especially in the small villages around Leipzig, a lot of hand-to-hand combat.
And then there's the fog.
Yes, but this wasn't natural fog, it was smoke. The smoke from thousands and thousands of muskets and cannons just created this thick gray blanket that covered everything.
That's a huge problem for commanders, isn't it?
A massive problem. You can't see what's happening, you can't direct your troops, your artillery can't aim properly, it just adds to the chaos.
So at the end of day 1, even though they're outnumbered, the French actually hold their ground.
They do. They fight incredibly hard and push back most of the attacks. But the cost was enormous. Thousands killed and wounded on both sides, and really nothing was decided. It was a bloody stalemate.
Which brings us to a very tense day 2. The fighting dies down.
Yeah, both sides were just exhausted. They needed to regroup, get ammunition to the front lines, and try to deal with the thousands of wounded men just lying in the fields.
What's going through Napoleon's mind here? He must have known he was in a bad spot.
A terrible spot. He was hoping for reinforcements, but they weren't showing up. He actually thought about retreating, but he decided to stay and fight.
Why? Pride.
That was part of it, for sure. But retreating then would have looked like a total defeat. He thought he could still pull off one more decisive counterattack. It was a huge gamble.
And while he's gambling, the coalition is getting stronger.
Much stronger. They used that pause to bring in tens of thousands of fresh troops who had just arrived. Their numbers just kept growing while Napoleon's army was stuck. The odds were getting worse for him by the hour.
You mentioned the wounded. The human cost here is just awful to think about.
It was a humanitarian crisis. The medics were overwhelmed. They were turning schools, churches, any large building into a makeshift hospital. But for the men in the fields, there was very little anyone could do.
So that brings us to day 3, October 18th. The coalition decides this is it.
This is the day. They launch a massive, coordinated assault from all sides. The plan was just to use their overwhelming numbers to crush the tired French forces.
And it starts to work. The French lines begin to break. But then something happens that makes it all so much worse for them.
The betrayal. This is the real turning point. The Saxon army, who were supposed to be Napoleon's allies.
Right, they were fighting for him.
They were, and then right in the middle of the battle, thousands of them just defected. They walked over to the other side and turned their cannons around.
Unbelievable. What did that do to the French line?
It created chaos. A gigantic hole just opened up in their defenses. It wasn't just losing the soldiers, it was the shock. It completely broke their morale. Napoleon had to pull everyone back toward the city just to avoid a total collapse.
And the coalition must have pounced on that opportunity?
Immediately, they poured troops into that gap. Cannonballs started landing inside Leipzig itself, setting buildings on fire. By late afternoon, it was clear. The battle was lost. The French couldn't hold on any longer.
So Napoleon's focus shifts from winning to just surviving, to getting what's left of his army out of there.
Exactly. But there was a huge problem. There was only one way out. A single stone bridge over the Elster River.
One bridge for an entire army to retreat over.
One bridge. It was instant chaos. A massive traffic jam of soldiers, horses, wagons, cannons, all trying to squeeze through this one narrow escape route.
Panicked, disorganized.
Completely. Napoleon himself gets across just before sunrise on the 19th, and he gives a critical order, blow up the bridge, but only after the last French soldier is safely across.
Oh, that's not what happened.
No. The corporal in charge of the explosives, we don't know if he panicked or got a confusing order, but he blew the bridge way too early.
Oh, no. While French troops were still on the other side.
Thousands of them. They were completely trapped. Their only escape route was just gone. Hundreds tried to swim across the cold river. Most of them drowned, including a famous Polish marshal, Prince Poniatowski.
And what happened to the ones trapped in the city?
About 30,000 of them were stuck inside Leipzig, completely surrounded. They had no choice. They were forced to surrender. It turned a bad retreat into an absolute catastrophe.
Let's talk about the final numbers. The cost of those 4 days.
It's horrifying. The estimates are around 100,000 soldiers killed, wounded, or missing in total. The scale of the loss just shocked Europe. That's why they started calling it the Battle of the Nations. It felt like a whole generation was lost there.
And what about the city of Leipzig itself?
The city was ruined. The local economy was destroyed. People said the smell of death hung over the town for months. It took years for things to get back to anything close to normal.
And for Napoleon, this was the end of the line, strategically speaking.
It was the beginning of the end. He lost all his power in Germany. His allies deserted him. Leipzig proved he could be beaten, that his armies weren't invincible.
And the coalition didn't let up, did they?
Not for a second. They chased him all the way back to France. The next year, they captured Paris, and Napoleon was forced to abdicate and was exiled to the island of Elba. The defeat at Leipzig made all of that possible.
Even today, the legacy of this battle is huge. You can still see it.
You absolutely can. In Leipzig, there's the monument to the Battle of the Nations. It was finished in 1913 for the 100th anniversary. It's massive, over 90 meters tall. It's one of the largest war memorials in the world.
It really stands as a symbol of that moment.
It does, a symbol of shared sacrifice, but also of nations coming together. Historians still study the battle today. It influenced how borders were redrawn, and it laid some of the very, very early groundwork for the idea of European cooperation.
When you really think about it, the future of the entire continent was decided in those 4 days. Not just by generals, but by the chaos, the smoke, and that one catastrophic mistake at the bridge.
It really was. Leipzig showed that even the most powerful empire could be brought down when nations united against it. It completely reshaped the future of Europe.
Good luck with your studies.